If the Alien franchise is known for a palpable sense of tension evident in even its worst movies, they're all ultimately based on an alien that can turn your face into a murder scene. Then the first few hours of Dark Descent is that same murder scene, but on the floor of a one-star hotel near an airport. Cheap, nasty, and buggy. It's a game as uneven as the movie series. However, just like the movies, you can usually find something to like in every single one of them. And I'll be damned if Aliens Dark Descent isn't the same way. Well, let's get some roughness out of the way. Also, I'm like 159 million subscribers less than Mr. Beast, so let's take him down. If you like the video, subscribe, give me a heads up on what your favorite Alien movie is. Hell, even if you don't like the Alien series, maybe it's Predator, The Thing, or The Fast and Furious, pop off in the comments. The first 1,000 people to comment win nothing. This video is sponsored by nobody. Set 20 years after the events of Alien 3, a team of colonial marines have to stop a xenomorph outbreak while gathering resources to repair the Otago. It's their spacecraft that crash lands on a nearby planet. From the developers of Battlefleet Gothic, Aliens Dark Descent is a real-time squad-based action game with you taking on the commander role, attempting to replicate that original Aliens movie feeling of strength and weakness intermixed. You'll see the Marines mow down xenomorphs only to make a bad choice and watch them get picked off one by one, time and time again. Aliens has you searching across the planet to uncover the mysteries of what's happened and trying to fight off the alien horde as you gather resources to repair that battleship. You're consistently throwing groups of Marines into the darkness. Aliens controls like very few other games that I can remember in this setup. You control a squad, not individual Marines, and at any time you can move in one direction but look in the other, shuffle down corridors, keeping an eye on the ever-present and memorable movement sensors. You try to delve just a bit deeper into the angry insect hive that's constantly hunting you. Now, for each Marine, the game offers a selection of 5 initial character classes already set up before you recruit them, as well as their initial look and weapon package. You choose the mission location, and then the Marines you want to go on that mission, as well as any special add-on gear you can buy. Lining up accurate shots, moving characters to and from cover, and using special skills like grenades, flares, and others to keep the aliens from getting too close is the name of the game, and the expected standards apply here. Constantly keeping in lockstep with that is a growing set of missions that escalate in danger the longer you explore, raising the planet's infestation level as you take missions day by day. Each mission trying to collect those resources, upgrading alien DNA for experimentation, finding and rescuing more characters from the planet you can use, and keeping your Marines, who are an ever-increasing collection of scars, injuries, mental breakdowns, and heroic moments, in bipedal form, alive. Then the battles break out. Aliens sprinting towards you from any location, facehuggers consistently trying to break your throat open and dump some alien baby seeds down it so that they can later turn into xenomorphs. Even humans left over on the planet are enemies you'll fight. Normal actions like firing and moving, they're all free of charges, no moves needed. But special moves like throwing some flares down to increase accuracy or dropping grenades into the path of enemies require points that are gained by being alive longer and more successful actions you take, and augmented by any perks that the Marines may have. The longer you live and the more actions you take, the more stress builds on the Marines, though, with them slowly becoming more and more tense and losing accuracy, which can be negated a bit by basically swallowing a bunch of downers or finding a place to rest in the massive levels, or just going home. What can't be slowed down is that growing alien threat, with them becoming more and more aware of your presence and sending out hunts to find you or huge swarms to take you out. If that happens, it's time to weld some doors shut, drop some mines, and throw down a couple autoguns. To do that, you need to cultivate 2 things. Marines, and Marines who live. One is easy, the other not so much. First, as Marines level up, they choose 2 classes split from the basic class, with those being advanced. Each one comes with its own class skills like hacking, drones, attack drones, autoguns, healing, and more. Some of the ideas here are actually genuinely good in the battle sections and revolve back into the fiction itself with the perks. Going back to a mission area to clean it up still keeps the game tense, as the trade-off for story and resources that you might gather is directly faced off against the growing infestation of the planet and the ultimate endgame. And even retreat is ever-presently deadly. The game tries its best to reflect parts of almost every movie, from the crazy people left on the slowly decaying orbit of craziness like Aliens 3, or the excellent moments in Aliens, the movie, where you're welding doors shut to hold off the aliens. And since the major mission areas are investigated many times and changed depending on your actions, that means if you weld one door shut and then end up in another mission in the same area battling it out, that door may be welded shut from the inside, now meaning you can't go through that area unless you go all the way around. It's ingenious, really, and gives this awesome sense of presence to all of the locations if it wasn't so damned finicky, to the point where sometimes you feel like the guy who replaces the whole car when their suspension goes bad. Constantly looking back and forth over your shoulder and into the next area, and that sense of tenseness growing and feeling that this may actually just be game over, man. but not always because you didn't do what you wanted to do. And that starts with control. It's almost instantly apparent, like I said, that Aliens controls differently than you might be accustomed to. They want you to feel like you're a commander watching over them, barking out orders. It's the game's desire to make you feel like the Marines have this choice filter, almost a small section of mental awareness that makes them do things that aren't always exactly like you wanted, but still getting the basic job done, simultaneously feeling like you're slightly out of control when you shouldn't be in danger, and then oddly tighter in combat situations. There's a bit of fuzz here. For example, if you go into a room and look around with a flashlight, the group moves in sections. If you scan left to right or right to left, the Marines cover a bit, then the next one takes over and the next one, which can be awesome in the overall look and feeling of a squad. I love that, especially when they aren't lined up perfectly, adding a bit of suspense. If you click on 3 items, 3 Marines go down the line and grab those items. Also, scavenging takes a long time. It feels right for this game. Nothing is instant. However, during battle, that feels less like being loose and more like the game wants you to lose. Add to that, the Marines will sometimes just walk around one location or circle the long way around outside a room to get into somewhere else. Cover arcs and handling suppressing fire seems like a good idea, but trying to line it up can be frustrating even with the game's slow motion pause system. For example, the game has this cover system, but it's somewhat loose, and the Marines utilize a vision and aiming system that could also just be used as a random seed generator for other titles, and how often they'll miss the alien right in front of them or hit someone across the room. The controls are finicky enough that the non-pause slow motion effect still feels almost too fast, and timing can be hard to get right, since normal speed hides a lot of those longer animations for things like grenade tosses, which can lead to utter annihilation when you try the same thing in slow motion mode and realize that you're going to toss the grenade far behind the enemy. You can take that as a positive or a negative, as it does add some tension. Another system in the game that adds tension, actually, there are many, but this one is slightly in your control, is the trait system. Basically, battle sucks, and the alien fiction's always been excellent in personifying the hazards of going up against enemies that move at speed and hide in the darkest parts of the world, only to leap out and stab your best friend to death. Marines gain negative traits as they battle. Strangely, the game sort of piles them onto the original Marines you start out with as well, instead of just gaining them as you go, making it feel like somehow you inherited the one group of Marines all due for Section 8. And it does have tons of trait, like poor sight, or undisciplined, or unfit, or jinxed, affecting accuracy, fighting during downtime, lower health, or randomly jamming your weapon in that order. In Aliens, the tagline has always been, "No one can hear you scream." Here, everyone can, because everybody's screaming. The game really wants you to feel the burn. For instance, it has no less than 5 ways to increase the difficulty and add tension, from those traits to massive alien bands to a doom ticker, also counting up to alien hunts, and then their own scripted events that they program in, and then a total infestation level that, you guessed it, raises the infestation, which just means more aliens. Now, normally with games like this, there's a balance where it feels like the game gives you abilities to offset the difficulty, but Aliens only demonstrates that after some very wonky first hours. Here's an example. In the first couple battles, I had a character who was a coward, poorly sighted, with a marauding band of aliens coming towards him, and was out of the main assault rifle, which means he had to carry a scientist back to the main station, or that mission was failed, but he only had that handgun. So when enemies came in, I needed to suppress them, which was an additional 20 points removed from accuracy on top of the poor-sighted penalty. At some point, it's the equivalent of asking Ray Charles to lay and spray into a room and see what happens. It's not that the ideas are horrible, it's that their implementation feels like it was done under the stress of an alien invasion itself, and comes in a little late. Even things like suppressive fire, they require 2 steps to really get it working, placing your character and then choosing the angle. But you have to watch out that you don't move the cursor, or the character may end up running past the enemies and laying a wicked suppressing fire into a wall. Also, the save game gives you no information to where you are in the game. I mean, they show a time, but for a game with this many kill zones and bad circumstances, not even a screenshot is a pretty big problem. One time I had to load almost a dozen saves to find the right one. The biggest problem with Aliens is that its first few hours are not strong nor well directed on any of those systems. Most of them starting out already established, which can feel very rough instead of a smooth insertion to a new title. Does this sound frustrating? Probably, and it is. But later, slowly, the game came into its own. Usually games like this, they take off the training wheels and you, the player, get better. Aliens feels like it's taken its own training wheels off and getting better commensurate with your time. While most games are created in a spiral with the developers returning again and again to the core and other sections, moving between the circles of improvements as they go, Aliens is probably the first game I can remember that feels like it was almost developed in a linear fashion, first level to last. Even the graphic and audio presentation follows this pattern. For instance, graphically, the first tutorial section is rough, almost surprisingly so, with rough-hewn characters that make you wonder why the developers decided to use game models from a PS3 and some of the worst, most boring environments in a game of this type, especially for starting. Then, things begin to improve the more you play, slowly, and I do mean slowly, etching out more detailed graphical experiences as you go. And admittedly, it's still a pretty basic template, with rooms and locations sort of cut and pasted together. Alien caves remind you of locations directly from the original movies, and the tension builds when you're peeking through the darkness with that light bouncing off the edges of a guardrail as you hide behind some cases, waiting for an enemy to go around the corner so you can sneak by. The lighting system in this is actually really good. It just takes a while to get started. And as the locations become more advanced, more interesting, the skills also have better graphical presentations, and the interplay of the light, again, is one of the strengths. Sending shafts through the darkness even as you watch the aliens' movements, and your own high firepower machine guns throwing light off the carapaces of wet, slick, and snot-riddled alien broodhomes. That looks awesome. While the characters in the cutscenes never look awesome or even current, the later game strategies and the game penchant for just throwing plenty of enemies at you in unique locations somewhat impresses as you continue through it. What doesn't, and this is a kick in the nuts, are the boss fights. Sometimes you're going to find special aliens or a queen and you think, let's go, Bishop, where's the equipment loader, like Ripley had? But instead, it's just this monstrosity that looks somewhat like the queen from the movies, but her animations are janky, collision detection is more like impact maybeing, and killing them requires that you fire a lot while not getting hit a lot, because many of the battles happen in sections too small to be of service to the majesty of the alien queen, pissy, jumping around kind of boss battle you would hope for. Luckily, aside from a couple really bad cutscene moments with jittery frame rates, the game actually runs pretty well, even without using FSR. A surprise to me is, lately it feels like every game using FSR and DLSS is a leg to stand on, replacing it as a crutch for high firepower moments. On the highest settings, the game is easily going to push an Xbox original to its limit in the early parts, and then actually begins to look quite good. You'll never assume the game is fully current, though. The same's repeated with the audio. The starting section's audio is very lean for atmospherics, never feels much more like just a bunch of thrumming sounds with Marines running down a hallway, with the occasional interspersed aliens hopped up assault rifle sound to accompany it. With poor voice acting in a starting part of the story that seems like it doesn't really know much about what it wants to tell you, or even why it should, or why you would care. Then, that also improves. The characters that you play as the main commanders also start to gel later on. It's like everyone realized 2 hours in that they should probably explain a couple things. The game's branching and dynamic mission structure aids in that delivery. Now, Aliens isn't a short game either, for better or worse, clocking in over 24 hours with not even everything nearly done. And its biggest problem can be its greatest moments. It's just how you take it all in, and I wish the game explained things a little bit more and was just a little bit less clunky. I don't ever damn a developer for trying something new, because when Aliens work, man, my God, it works. And that's usually tied to the atmosphere and the fact that the biggest problem for you as a commander isn't the aliens themselves. It's humanity and its brittle bone brain syndrome for the Marines. These guys crack open like eggs the moment the shit hits the fan. Fighting off aliens with acid for blood and has two mouths because it's not scary just having one probably isn't that fun. But every single Marine has some issue. There isn't even a single normal dude in the entire bunch, so pretty soon you're rolling out squad foobar into battle for your life, and your leader being a depressive crier with bad eyesight, backed up by some portly donut eaters who couldn't pass any PT tests, and then another guy who's afraid of fire and spends all night during reset periods sowing unrest in the few good Marines you may have. And by the way, your highest ranking Marine is paranoid and is always tired, and that's the good team. But that's also a bit of the juice. That atmosphere and reflection really does work later on, with some skills, for instance, sort of collapsing on one another and becoming worse and worse as you gain more squad members and gain more Marines. And there's a lot of different ways in which you can remove some of the worst traits, but that usually, unfortunately, takes a place of another good trait. But that's what a review is to forewarn you, which is awesome for you, but not as fun as the reviewer meandering through it trying to figure out what the hell's going on. Then something does happen. And the good moments start at times to outweigh the bad ones. As you're moving through the locations and you're using your light to shine on interactive moments, it's that intractable, almost intangible moment of terror when the aliens finally end up coming at you through 3 doors. It's welding a door shut. As you succeed, aliens bust in through another door and your Marines work in perfect unison to take them down. But a facehugger hiding behind some barrels leaps out and attacks a teammate. So you run over to tear it off and realize you didn't have enough resources to buy an extractor kit, and your Marine dies. The guy you just removed a negative trait from and raised up a class. You decide to quit the mission, which you can, and come back and keep going because it's all dynamic. You go back and that soldier gets their own memorial with stats. It's not presented as smoothly as something like XCOM, but it sort of fits Alien's dark core militaristic expectations. Just a simple badge of honor with some data about who he killed. More grist for the mill. So you can go back to training area, rush a couple fresh recruits through, and do it again. It's go time. Mission or man rescue. That's today's job. Just like yesterday's, and just like tomorrow. But gets off the ground way, way later. So as you guys know, I rate games on a buy, wait for a sale, deep sale, or never touch rating system. Aliens is just all over the place, and who knows, someone may like the starting, but there are people who probably play dodgeball with bar darts. If you ever had a friend that's pretty cool, but every time you see him, it feels a bit like the first time, it's awkward and the pacing's off, and you almost have to rebuild rapport with them. By the way, if you don't have one of those friends, you are that friend. Alien is like that. Every time I came back to it, I had to come to grips again with some clunkiness or uneven control scheme. The game sort of grew on me, but it never made me feel like it was fully safe to trust it. Who knows? Maybe that's a feature. Maybe the whole plan of the game is to layer in this sense of obscurity to all of the events and the controls. I liked a lot of it, but not enough to say to get it right away. For me, this is a wait. Remember to subscribe, comment, thumbs up. You'll see some big reviews coming from me this week. Check out the Patreon and the podcast. Peace out.
All right, Marines, listen up. I know we're hurting, but we got us a go mission.
Move on! Suppressing fire! Light him up! Shit, they know we're here.
Bring them down!
Yeah, don't mess with me! Watch out!